Welcome back to Flow Made Simple. I'm Coach Lachlan, and in today's video, we're applying the best 360 drill to eliminate the 4 most common mistakes that are made in 360s so that you can perform more powerful and efficient 360s in your workouts. Now, the primary focus of this video is the drill, which is the solution. But before we dive into that, we have to understand the problems we're trying to fix. And that's why we're going to be starting with the 4 most common mistakes. Then we'll learn the drill and how to apply the drill to refine different parts of our technique. Now grab your mace and we'll get started. So we're going to start by identifying the 4 most common mistakes. Now the best way to assess yourself is to take video of yourself. Specifically for all of these, you'll want to do facing front towards your camera. And then for the first one that we're going to start with, the first most common mistake, you'll also want to do a side profile as well. And taking this video of yourself will really help you in figuring out what mistakes you're making, if any, and then also help you track your progress, which is the most important thing. So we're gonna kick it off with that first mistake. The first mistake that I see most commonly is in pushing at an angle. And what this means is that I'm actually tilting the mace backwards, which initiates the pendulum to swing forwards and backwards instead of side to side. We want the pendulum to go side to side so we can continue the momentum of the mace. When we angle the mace, which is done by either pushing our arms forwards or by tilting our wrist in the backward direction, or sometimes both of those, what happens is we interrupt the momentum of the mace and we make it go off kilter basically. And we lose stability through our spine, through our lower body, and it's just a much less efficient movement. It's also much more likely to put extra torque on your shoulders, which becomes a much larger problem as you advance in your weight. So pushing at an angle is the first common mistake, and it's one you certainly want to avoid. The second common mistake that I often see in 360s is over pushing. Now this is different than pushing at an angle because we're assuming that the angle we're pushing at is correct, but there's still the issue of over pushing. And what this means is that we are actually pushing our arms much too high, over pushing the tail of the mace as we initiate the pendulum, as we initiate our 360. And the calling card of this is that you'll be pushing your arms up almost straight, and then your arms have to re-bend and kind of almost quote unquote snap back down to drop into position to allow your pendulum. This is 2 things. 1, not efficient because you are adding more energy into the 360 than is actually necessary. And 2, it actually makes you lose control of the mace. And it also reduces the stability within your joints simultaneously because as you extend your arms up overhead, you're pushing the mace's center of gravity further from your own center of gravity, which is the fastest way to actually lose control of the mace. And it also destabilizes your joints because as you drop your arms down fast, in order to pendulum the mace, because the mace has dropped and you have, a weighted mace on a stick flying through the air downwards, your joints are going to have to automatically find a stable position, which means that you will have a harder time choosing the right position for them to be in. So over pushing impacts our technique negatively, and we don't want to perform this in order to advance the mace weights, advance our number of reps, and advance our endurance. So we want to make sure we're avoiding over pushing the mace. The third most common mistake that I see when teaching 360s is that students will often over pull on the mace. And what this means is that as they complete the pendulum of their 360, they over pull the mace and it comes back across their center into the next 360 instead of coming back aligned with their center line. Now there are certain techniques with the 360 in which you want to maintain the momentum, but as you learn this movement, you want to learn how to apply just the right amount of power to the mace at the end of the pendulum to pull it back to your center line. You don't want to get in the habit of constantly over pulling the mace because it throws you off balance. That is the primary reason. You don't want to be off balance. You want to remain strong and stable in your stance and constantly be able to know exactly how much force you need to pull the mace back to the center line and no further and no less. And this leads me into our last common mistake that I see with the 360. And this common mistake is underpulling. This mistake often appears when the student has not yet learned how to create a smooth pendulum. And what that means is that as the 360 is swinging behind, it is either swinging at an angle, which was caused by the first problem I talked about in this video, or the pendulum simply isn't strong enough yet for a variety of reasons. And this issue, under pulling, will also result in a lack of balance and a lack of stability because you have to move away from your center strong position to get your hands underneath the mace to recover it back to the center line, because if you don't, the mace would simply tip over. So we also want to avoid under pulling. Now I'll dive into the drill that can fix all 4 of these common issues. Also, if you enjoy this education, I invite you to sign up for my free Flow Fridays newsletter, which sends out in-depth coaching and workouts every single week. I've added the sign up link in the description below. The best drill to fix these 4 most common mistakes is the tick-tock drill, which is a simple drill that involves us going from a stable position into a pendulum and returning to a stable position. Now I'm going to address how to use the tick-tock to fix each of those 4 parts, but first we're going to learn how to do the drill. Now performing it is simple, but there are some important technique cues. So first, I am going to initiate a nice strong stance, focusing on my posture by screwing my feet into the ground, activating through my glutes and through my core. And I'm going to bring my elbows a little bit towards my ribs instead of flaring out. And this is to keep my shoulders in external rotation. Finally, nice long spine up to the ceiling. So this is our starting stance. I want to hold it throughout. Next, I'm going to point the mace, which is going to be straight to the side and follow it with your gaze. And you can practice going from one side to the other if you'd like to. This is a good exercise as well. Now next in the tick-tock, after I've pointed straight to the side, I am going to let the mace fall and drop into a pendulum. Again, straight to the side, let it fall 1, 2, 3, and pull back. I'll do the other side. So point, follow with the gaze, drop. 1, 2, 3, and pull back. Again, return to a nice strong stance. I'll do 1 more on each side. So, point, drop, 1, 2, 3, pull back. Last one, point, drop, 1, 2, 3. And this is our tick-tock. Now, real quick, I just want to show you from the back so you can see the pendulum. Really nice and simple. I'm going to point, drop, 1, 2, 3, and 1 more, point, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you are struggling to initiate the pendulum at all, it is likely because of this issue. The 360 is not a kettlebell or dumbbell halo, which means my hands do not go around my head during the 360. Rather, my hands are going to travel straight up my center line over the top of my head and back down behind. And so I'm never going to be bringing my hands out to the sides and trying to swing around. I'm always going to push my hands straight up, drop behind, and pull straight back down. That's an important cue if you're struggling to drop into your pendulum. Be mindful of your hands. And now I'm going to address how to use this drill to fix each of those 4 most common mistakes. Also, if you need more practice of bringing your hands up and down across your center line, check out this workout because it includes a movement called the pullover, which will help give you that practice. The link to this workout is in the description below. To solve the issue of pushing the mace at an angle, focus on this part of the tick-tock. When you point the mace to the side, and only to the side, not backwards or forwards, and I initiate my pendulum, I want to continue the mace pointing straight out and bring my hands straight up. I don't want to push my hands out or angle the mace back. I want to drop to the side, bring my hands up, and initiate the pendulum of the tick-tock. And that is how I want to focus on this. So straight to the side and hands come straight up. I do not want to be pushing my hands forward at any point during the 360. To solve the over-pushing issue in our 360s, we will focus on this part of the tick-tock, specifically the initiation of the pendulum itself. And what I'm going to focus on is not the mace, but my hands. I want to make sure that I am not bringing my hands up above my head more than I have to. So my hands will come straight up, just over my head, no higher than they need to, as I initiate that pendulum. And another cue to help you with this is to keep your arms at about a 90-degree angle or smaller as you go through this position, as you initiate the pendulum. So my hands go up, arms come into a tighter angle, and then I'll come back out and catch in that nice stable position. So my arms never have to extend up and snap down. My hands only rise as high as they need to initiate the pendulum. So focus on that in your TikTok, initiating the pendulum. To solve the issue of over-pulling, I want you to focus on not muscling the mace. I want you to focus on letting the momentum of the mace carry itself back into our original position. So during the TikTok, I want you to focus on the end of the pendulum. So initiating it nice and strong and then letting the momentum come back to the front. I don't want to overly try to muscle the mace during my TikTok to bring it back to the front. Let the momentum do the job. Focus on the finesse. So one more, you can see dropping it back 1, 2, and letting it just carry itself back over. Basically, use as little energy as you can during the pull in order to fix the over-pulling issue. And finally, we'll apply the TikTok to solving the issue of under-pulling. Now, under-pulling is usually a consequence of a pendulum that doesn't have quite enough momentum behind it, and it's a little bit off kilter, like we talked about in the first most common mistake. So oftentimes, under-pulling and pushing at an angle are going hand in hand. Now, the way to fix this with the TikTok is to increase the number of pendulums from 3 to 5. So pointing with the mace, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then pulling back. Now, the reason for this is to give yourself more repetition with swinging the mace and initiating a stronger pendulum, getting the right angle down so that you can let the mace's momentum carry itself back to the front. So practice that, and additionally, it may be worthwhile to use a slightly lighter weighted mace so that there's a little bit less strain on your joints as you're learning this. That may solve your problem. Now here's your checklist. First, take a video of yourself from the front and the side so that you can assess your current technique of the 360. Then look for the various mistakes that you might be making as it pertains to these 4 most common. Next, apply the TikTok drill specifically to solve any of the mistakes that you've identified. And finally, drop a comment down below if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next Flow Made Simple video.